Medawalin. I'm Jane McMillan, author of Truth and Conviction, Donald Marshall Jr. and the Mi'kmaq Quest for Justice. And I'm thrilled and honored to be nominated for the Atlantic Book Award for scholarly writing. So thank you for this privilege. I'm going to read a few excerpts from Chapter 7, We Go Fishing in Search of a Livelihood. Donald loved to fish. He enjoyed the privacy of wandering down the river with his fly rod or on the ice with a jig. It was where he found peace and joy. Taught to fish as a boy, he told fishing stories throughout his life. Down Sky River, Donald skillfully hand-jigged a salmon, dropping it at my feet with a sly smile. I was mesmerized. We feasted. Having had success as an avid food harvester, Donald wanted to secure an income through an activity he enjoyed, one that allowed him to celebrate his Mi'kmaq identity through respectful relationship with a culturally significant resource. He wanted to work. He sought the wilderness and exhilaration that small-scale fishing offered him, far away from the spotlight under which he had lived since his wrongful conviction for murder. We became eel fishers. Mi'kmaq eeling is labor-intensive, and during our first season, the Bernard brothers from Wagoba, Lunch, Chucky, and Seven, and Uncle Ikion, Donald's mother's brother, lent us spike nets and taught us the ropes and mullagawatch. By the next season, we had earned enough to buy our own nets, and we hauled them, hand by hand, and they were heavy when wet and awkward to set, even in the calmest of weathers. We fixed the nets in the mud with poles that had been cut and trimmed from the local woods with the help of fishing buddies. It was hard and dirty work, but we liked the adventure. Every time there was a thunderstorm, Donald rubbed his hands together and said, "Lots of eels tomorrow, baby." And he was right. Initially, we liked the trials of catching eels. Fishing reinvigorated and helped to reintegrate Donald. We were part of a communal occupation that gave meaning to our lives, an activity grounded in Mi'kmaq customary practices and the laws of harvesting, an activity in adherence to an ethos of sharing. Eels are a favorite food of Mi'kmaq elders. We distributed the biggest and the best eels among the old people, and they always asked us for a feed no matter where we were, or at a funeral or a wedding or grocery shopping. Many admired Donald's eel cleaning skills. When powwows or Treaty Day celebrations required eels for the traditional garawabu or eel stew, Donald went out of his ways to ensure that there was enough, spending hours bent over the sink, wrestling the eels into submission to prepare them for consumption. Eels still wiggle after they're gutted. Eel fishing is not prestigious nor particularly lucrative. Eels are slimy and muddy, and they are in areas where they typically have a pungent and lingering odor. Like any resource extraction process, fishing is dangerous and the risk of personal injury is high. Donald was not a strong swimmer, which compounded the danger. The financial risks were also high. The catch was determined by uncontrollable factors like the weather, uncertain reproduction patterns, gear malfunctions. We fished in Cape Breton for another season, then moved our nets and boat down to Buknakik, Mi'kmaq territory, on the mainland. We had heard that the eels were big there and running well. We spent several nights a week with Donald's cousin, Billy Gugu, and his family, and they helped us navigate the new waters. Kinship matters. On a bright August day in 1993, a boat approached us while we were checking our nets. It was unusual to see others fishing in the area. But as the boat came closer, we could see it contained Department of Fisheries and Oceans officers, uniformed and armed. The officers pulled alongside our boat and examined its contents. They asked us if there was anything else on board beside eels. We had told them that all bycatch had been released. An officer then asked to see our fishing licenses. Donald said that he was Mi'kmaq and did not need a license to fish. "Everyone needs a license to fish," replied the officer. "I don't need a license. I have the 1752 treaty," Donald responded. They asked for our names and address and took a net as evidence. We thought it was just a misunderstanding because we were new to the area. We felt safe because we were in Mi'kmaq territory, and Donald was protected by his treaty rights affirmed and recognized by the Supreme Court of Canada in 1985 in Simon v. the Queen, and Section 35 of the Constitution Act in 1982. We headed back to the reserve and we told people what had happened, and we called the Department of Fisheries and Oceans and asked what's going on. We wanted the $250 net back. And they told us we needed permission from the chief to fish in that area. So we asked Chief Kerry Prosper, and he said we can continue fishing. We let the department know we had his consent and continued to fish. A few days later, we sold the eels and reset the nets. When we went back to fish 2 days later, we were outraged to find our nets and boat gone. At no time did it occur to us that eel fishing was licensed or that we did not have a right to sell the eels we caught. The eel fishing case, which began in Nova Scotia Provincial Court on October 17, 1994, was public, expensive, and lengthy. The trial was set out as a test case for Mi'kmaq treaty rights, and the chiefs were happy it was Donald who had been charged. The case was sure to get lots of media exposure. Because Donald had admitted to catching and selling eels without a license and with prohibited nets during a closed time, the only issue at trial was whether he possessed a treaty right to catch and sell fish that exempted him from compliance with the regulations. Conservation was not an issue. Upon hearing the evidence regarding the treaties, the court convicted Donald Marshall on all charges in June 1996. The conviction was upheld by the Nova Scotia Court of Appeal. Donald later then was granted leave to appeal to the Supreme Court of Canada. At no time during the proceedings was Donald given an opportunity to express how it came to be that he became a fish harvester, how he understood his ability to fish as an inherent right and as an integral part of his Mi'kmaq identity. He did not get a chance to describe how he practiced the Mi'kmaq legal principles of responsible harvesting and sharing, which have been passed down for generations. The Supreme Court of Canada heard the case, and on September 17, 1999, decided in favor of Donald Marshall. The decision reverberated across the country, inspiring Indigenous communities to unite in collective action to secure their rights to resources. The federal government, the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, and non-Aboriginal fishers were not prepared for the decision. Given the fragile state of the fishery, acrimony had increased, not only between settler and Indigenous peoples, but also within these groups as well. Despite the opinion of the Supreme Court, Mi'kmaq claims to territories, resource management, and equitable access in practice were denied. Media accounts propelled animosity towards Indigenous harvesters by perpetuating negative stereotypes and exaggerating instances of overfishing and the use of illegal gear. When Donald went out into public, he was often accosted and blamed by settlers for disrupting generations of family businesses and taking food out of the mouths of their children. One of the greatest obstacles to reconciliation is the widespread position held by agents of the Crown, such as those in Fisheries and Oceans Canada, that the Supreme Court decisions affirming Indigenous treaty rights are losses rather than wins. In litigation, the relationship between the Crown and Indigenous peoples remains adversarial. In response to perceived losses, Crown agents aggressively assert their regulatory power and control, and the Mi'kmaq have to resist. When we went fishing on that fateful day in August 1993, it never crossed our minds that harvesting and selling the innocuous eel would lead to the transformative Supreme Court decision, R.V. Marshall. We were simply trying to get food on the table and gas in the boat, and hopefully we'd have a bit left over for beers at the 123 Legion in Waikagaman. Fortunately, the outcome was a true victory for the Mi'kmaq Nation. Donald's treaty rights legacy is written into the province's treaty education curriculum, with every school student and every civil servant will then receive. After decades of exclusion from and marginalization within the settler economies, the Mi'kmaq finally had incredible opportunities for nation rebuilding and economic growth. Member 2, Donald's home community, was transformed. Today, Member 2 exemplifies the extraordinary capacity, tenacity, ingenuity, and strength of Mi'kmaq communities. But this is not the end of the story. Valalio, thank you very much, and thanks to everyone who helped make this book possible. Have a great day.